Is 2025 the year you finally become fluent?
This is my year, okay?
It absolutely can be. You just need the right method. The best method to finally become fluent is to learn directly from natives in the real world. This is the best method because you'll improve all areas of your English at the same time. And that's what we'll do today.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. First, you'll listen to celebrities in the real world to test your listening skills, to learn natural vocabulary, and to learn advanced grammar. In this lesson, you're going to listen to a short clip of one of the celebrities talking, and you'll listen to that clip 3 times. And you need to complete the missing words. After, I'll explain all the vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation that you need to know. First, we'll listen to Taylor Swift's commencement speech at NYU. Here's the first listening exercise. You'll hear it 3 times.
No matter how hard you try to avoid being cringe, you will look back on your life and cringe retrospectively. No matter how hard you try to avoid being cringe, you will look back on your life and cringe retrospectively. No matter how hard you try to avoid being cringe, you will look back on your life and cringe retrospectively.
How'd you do? She said, no matter how hard you try to avoid being cringe, you will look back on your life and cringe retrospectively. Let's talk about the grammar because notice avoid, then you have a gerund verb. Avoid being cringe. And of course, to avoid is to stay away from someone or something because it makes you uncomfortable, perhaps. You could say, I've been avoiding. Notice that present perfect continuous is started in the past and continues until now. I've been avoiding speaking English in public because I'm worried about being cringe. Also notice here, you worry about something, a noun, or doing something, speaking in public, the gerund verb, because about is a preposition. You could say, I'm worried about the exam, or a gerund verb, I'm worried about failing the exam. Now let's talk about that word we've used a lot, cringe. This is colloquial, but very commonly used, and it means to behave in a way that causes embarrassment, awkwardness, or discomfort, either to yourself or others.
Oh my god, it was so cringe, wasn't it?
Okay, that is so cringe. That is so cringe. You just don't do that.
So it makes sense you would want to avoid being cringe. Let's look at to look back on your life. If you look back on something, it means you reflect on it. And in this case, your life. Now let's talk about this and cringe. Do you notice something different perhaps? It's the same word, but in this case, it's a verb. So the verb is to cringe. And this is to feel a strong emotional reaction of embarrassment or awkwardness. And we generally show this physically or visibly. What I just did, that is cringe. I just cringed. Here's a real example for you. I cringe when I look back on, when I reflect on my very first YouTube video, which as you can see is maybe a little cringe. So she uses colloquial language and advanced vocabulary retrospectively in the same sentence. So if you do something retrospectively, it means you think about past events. You could say retrospectively, thinking about past events, I wish I had started speaking English much sooner. Another way to say this is in hindsight or looking back. You could also say looking back on it being the situation in the past. So now you have colloquial and advanced vocabulary. Our next listening exercise, you need to complete the sentence with the missing words. You'll hear it 3 times.
Cringe is unavoidable over a lifetime. Even the term cringe might someday be deemed cringe. Cringe is unavoidable over a lifetime. Even the term cringe might someday be deemed cringe. Cringe is unavoidable over a lifetime. Even the term cringe might someday be deemed cringe.
How'd you do? She said cringe is unavoidable over a lifetime. Even the term cringe might someday be deemed cringe. You've certainly heard the word cringe a lot. So let's look at to be deemed something. This is the same as to be regarded as or judged as. So notice all 3 of these use the verb to be. For example, colloquial language is deemed slang by some, maybe you, but natives use it in daily speech in all situations, which is why it's important to learn the most common colloquial language. Now remember, you can use regarded or judged, but you need that preposition as. Colloquial language is regarded as, judged as, slang by some, and the rest is exactly the same. Now notice she used that modal verb, might be deemed. You need your modal plus base verb, which is why we have be, might be deemed. If something might happen, it's saying that it's not certain. There's some doubt. You could say, I might fail, base verb, I might fail my listening exam. That's why these exercises are so important. Our next listening exercise, complete the sentence with the missing words.
You can't avoid it, so don't try to. You can't avoid it, so don't try to. You can't avoid it, so don't try to.
How'd you do? She said, you can't avoid it, so don't try to. Now, what does the it represent in this sentence? The it represents being cringe, because remember, you need that verb in ing. You can use avoid plus noun. You can't avoid the exam, or you use that gerund verb. You talk about the action. You can't avoid taking the exam. I would summarize Taylor's advice to you as embrace being cringe, embrace it. What do you think? Do you agree with that? Put let's go, put let's go in the comments. Now let's move on and listen to Donald Trump respond to a very interesting audience question during the previous presidential debate. And that audience question was, what's one thing you admire about Hillary Clinton? Here are the sentences. You need to complete the missing words. You'll hear it 3 times.
I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit. She doesn't give up. I respect that. I tell it like it is. I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit. She doesn't give up. I respect that. I tell it like it is. I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit. She doesn't give up. I respect that. I tell it like it is.
How did you do? He said, I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit. She doesn't give up. I respect that. I tell it like it is. Notice he said, I will. Native speakers will commonly form a contraction and say all. Notice how unstressed that is. All. I'll say this about Hillary. I'll say this. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll help you. Now this expression, I'll say this about Hillary, this is used to introduce a statement or opinion. Another way of saying this is, here's what I have to say about Hillary. You could say, I'll say this about learning English with native speakers. and then you introduce your opinion. It's a very effective method. Do you think so? If you do, put that's right in the comments. Now let's talk about she doesn't quit, she doesn't give up. So notice here, he used the contracted form, does not, doesn't. Repeat after me, doesn't, doesn't. Now let's talk about quit and give up, because they can be interchangeable, but they can also have different meanings. It depends on context. Quit means to leave a position, such as your job, or to stop something permanently, such as learning English. So in terms of a position, you may know that Joe Biden quit the presidential race. He left it permanently. Now, if you've had enough of your boss and working overtime without pay, you can say, I quit. You're permanently leaving that position. Now, give up means that you surrender, you lose hope. So you stop doing something, you quit because you surrender or lose hope. So you could say, I've been trying to improve my listening skills for years. I give up. So in this case, it means you're no longer going to try. You've just lost all hope that is possible for you. You could also say, I've been trying to improve my listening skills for years. Maybe I should just quit. You could continue on and specify the something. I should just quit learning English. But if it's implied and obvious, you don't need to say it. Your friend could respond back, or I would respond back and say, don't quit, don't give up. So here, although different vocabulary, it means the same thing. Keep going. Don't quit, don't give up. You just need to subscribe to JForrest English. So make sure you subscribe. Now let's talk about I respect that. What does that represent here? I respect Hillary's determination, her persistence. Those are the adjectives we can use to describe someone who doesn't quit, who doesn't give up. Those are the nouns we can use to describe the fact that she doesn't quit, she doesn't give up. Hillary's determination, she is determined. Hillary's persistence, she is persistent. You could say she keeps going despite setbacks. Or you could say she keeps going despite facing challenges, because you can use despite with a noun or a gerund. And setbacks and challenges, they represent the same thing. Now let's talk about I tell it like it is. This is a colloquial way of saying I'm being straightforward, I'm being honest, I'm being direct. This is often used before offering an area of improvement in a direct, perhaps harsh way. So I could say to you, your accent needs improving. I'm sorry, but I tell it like it is. I'm being 100% honest, direct, even if it might hurt your feelings. There's another word to describe this, which is to be blunt. So when you're blunt, it means you're very honest, even if it might offend someone or hurt someone's feelings. To be blunt, your accent needs improving. So you can use to be blunt at the very beginning, and then you offer critical feedback. So let's summarize Trump's advice. Don't quit, don't give up. What do you think about that? If you agree, if you're not going to quit or give up, then put let's go in the comments. Now let's move on and listen to Oprah Winfrey's commencement speech at Harvard. Here's the sentence. You need to complete the missing words. You'll hear it 3 times.
There is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. There is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. There is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction.
Did you get this one? She said there is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. We can form a contraction between there is and say theirs. Repeat after me, theirs, theirs. There's no such thing as. This means something doesn't exist or something isn't real. So said another way, failure doesn't exist. Using that contraction, does not. Failure doesn't exist. Failure isn't, is not. Failure isn't real. There's no such thing as perfect English. This is something I commonly say to my students. Said another way, perfect English doesn't exist. So don't worry about making mistakes. Native speakers make them too. Next, failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. So notice here, failure is, you could form a contraction, especially in spoken English, and say failures. Failures just life. Now, native speakers commonly link our sounds together. So you could see this with move us in. It may sound like one word, move us in, move us in. Repeat after me, move us in. Now, move us in another direction. There's a very common expression to go in another direction. And this means to change your approach or plan. For example, I was going to enroll in a language school, but I went in another direction. I changed my plan, I changed my approach. And I subscribed to JForrest English. So let's summarize Oprah's advice. Failure doesn't exist. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Now let's keep going and focus on learning phrasal verbs because native speakers love using phrasal verbs, but they can be confusing. Do you know the difference between these two sentences? She called me out in the meeting. She called out to me in the meeting. Both of these sentences use a similar looking but different phrasal verb. To call someone out, to call out to someone. Yes, they look very similar, almost identical, but they have completely different meanings. Today you'll learn these phrasal verbs and 21 more. I personally use these 23 phrasal verbs every day, and adding these to your vocabulary will help you understand natives and sound fluent and natural. First, let's talk about to call someone out. This means to confront or criticize someone, often publicly, for their actions or behaviors. She called him out for not keeping his promises. This means that in public, she said, you didn't keep your promise, and that was a bad thing. She called him out. Now, my students, maybe even you, always call me out when I make a typo. They publicly say, Jennifer, you spelled that wrong. Jennifer, this isn't correct. But that's okay. I don't mind.
Bert's calling me out? Oh, apparently.
Called him out loudly.
It's interesting to hear them call us out on that.
Now let's compare this to call out to someone. This means to shout or raise your voice to get someone's attention. Hey John, hey Mary. He called out to his friend across the street. He did this to get her or his attention. So now let's compare these. He called out his friend. This is grammatically correct. It means to publicly criticize. He called out to his friend. This is grammatically correct. It means he shouted to get his friend's attention. Hey, John. I know this is very confusing, so you'll want to review it. Now let's talk about jump in. When you jump in, it means you enter a conversation or a situation. So I could say to you, if we were in a class or a meeting, a live lesson, feel free to jump in with any ideas. I'm inviting you to stop me in the middle of my presentation to share your ideas. Or maybe managers are talking and say, it's nice to see Sarah jumping in at meetings. They're saying it's nice to see Sarah participating, sharing her ideas more actively, maybe because she feels confident speaking in English.
I'm going to jump in, so I want to make sure I get this one in and lighten it up just a minute.
Please feel free to jump in at any point.
Now, just like my examples show, this is generally used in a positive way. And that's important because let's compare that to butt in. Butt in. This means to interrupt or intrude into a conversation in a negative way. He kept butting in while I was presenting. He kept stopping me to say something, and I found this very rude.
Just butting in here for some side facts.
Or you could say, you should just butt out. Butt out. It's none of your business. So notice here, I changed butt in to butt out. This means you should stop intruding in something that doesn't concern you.
Butt out, Klaus.
So let's review. Jump or butt into a conversation, discussion, meeting, or situation. Notice you need into as one word if you specify the noun, a conversation. And butt out of a conversation, discussion, meeting, or situation. So remember the meaning and that structure. Next, let's talk about to come up with. This means to think of or create something, such as an idea, plan, or solution. They came up with a new marketing strategy. They thought of, they created.
Because Louis Pasteur came up with his technique for sterilizing milk in 1865.
I spend time every day coming up with new lessons for you. I think about ideas, I write them down, I brainstorm for you.
What'd you come up with?
So now let's change the preposition and talk about to come out with. This means to introduce or release something new, usually a product or service. The way we communicate changed when Apple came out with the iPhone.
If we were sitting down having this interview the day that Apple came out with the iPhone, you'd be asking me, really? They're going to compete with Motorola?
Electric typewriters then came out with self-contained correction ribbons so that you could make corrections right there on the machine as you typed.
Let's compare these together. Engineers at Apple came up with the idea of a smartphone in 2005. I don't know if that date is accurate. This means they thought of the idea. What if we had a phone? Now, Apple came out with the iPhone in 2007. That date is correct. This means they released the idea to the public as a product, the product being the iPhone. You could buy the iPhone. Let's review to back out of something. This means to decide not to do something you had previously agreed to. She backed out of the deal at the last minute.
Why are you backing out?
Or you said you were going to finish the English course. Don't back out now.
Don't even think about backing out, man.
Let's compare this to back something up. This means to make a copy of data to prevent loss, something you should do. For years, my husband told me I should back up my computer, but I didn't listen.
Didn't you back it up in your computer?
But now that I use Google Docs, my files are automatically backed up. A copy of my files are saved in a secure location. So always back up your computer and don't back out of things you said you were going to do.
Where do you back up your data?
To catch on to something. This is when you begin to understand or realize something. It took him a while, but he finally caught on to the joke. Now, you don't have to include the something if context is obvious. You could say, it took him a while, but he finally caught on, if you're talking about a joke and the context is obvious.
But she caught on pretty fast.
But either way, people caught on to coffee's advantages and began making tea from its leaves.
So let's talk about catch up to someone. This means to reach the same level or pace as someone else. She's driving too fast. We'll never catch up. You can say we'll never catch up or catch up to her. If you specify the someone, you need the preposition to.
Hurry! They're catching up!
Now let's look at this sentence. I need to catch up on my work so I can catch up to my coworker. When you catch up on something, it means you do the tasks that you missed or were not previously completed.
With students able to catch up on work over a coffee in the new cafe.
Let's talk about to get across. This means to successfully communicate or convey an idea to others. He tried to get his point across, to get something across, his point across in the meeting.
That'll get our point across, right?
Or, I'm not sure what you're trying to get across. Ooh, maybe you need to say it a different way.
Anyways, the point that I'm trying to get across is that social media has made everything just that much more accessible.
Number 12, I love this one, to cheer on. This is when you encourage or support someone, often vocally. Let's go, woohoo, you can do it. The fans cheered on their team. And I could say to you, if you leave a comment, that is your way of supporting me vocally. So I could say, thank you for cheering me on. I couldn't have done it without your support.
Who cheered us on and picked us up when we stumbled.
Someone will be there to cheer us on and pick us up if we fall.
Let's compare this to cheer up. This means to help someone feel happier or to become happier oneself. I brought him a coffee to cheer him up.
Cheer up. They try with considerable vigor to cheer us up.
Or let's combine these. The fact that you came to cheer me on, let's go Jennifer, that really cheered me up, made me happier. Number 14, carry on. Most students know this. This means to continue with an activity or task despite challenges. She decided to carry on with her studies despite the difficulties.
Carry on.
Let's compare this to carry out. This means to complete or perform an action plan or task. They carried out the experiment successfully.
And we carried it out as a family.
Let's combine these. Let's carry on with the experiments. Notice you need with when you specify the something. Let's carry on with the experiments. Have you carried out? Have you conducted the first test? So remember, you carry on with something and you carry something out. Number 16, to look into something. This means to investigate or examine something in detail. The company is looking into the issue.
I'll look into it.
Let's compare this to look over something. This means to review or examine something briefly or casually. She looked over the document before signing.
Look over this contract.
Let's combine these together. I looked into, I investigated, I looked into the company, and I didn't find any red flags. Red flags are potential risks or problems. I didn't find any red flags. I still need to look over, review the contract. Let's review to check in with someone. This means to communicate with someone to see how they're doing or if they need assistance. He checked in with his supervisor before leaving for the day. So how could he do this? Well, he would go up to his supervisor and say, "Do you need anything before I leave?"
Thanks for checking in, though.
Now let's compare this to check up on someone. This is when you monitor or observe someone's progress, condition, or behavior to ensure all is well. My dad had an accident, so I check up on him. I observe him and monitor him every day.
Would it kill him to check up on us?
Sometimes to check up on someone is seen as a negative because it suggests that you don't trust someone's abilities. So you often hear people complain and say, "Oh, my boss checks up on me every 5 minutes," suggesting your boss doesn't trust your abilities and needs to monitor you closely.
Are you checking up on me?
Number 20, hang out. You should know this one. This means to spend time with someone socially in a casual way. We hung out at home all weekend. Or it's very common to say to people, "Let's hang out soon. Let's spend time socially soon."
Cool, let's hang out tonight.
Don't confuse this with to hang up, which means to end a phone call. She hung up before they decided where to hang out.
Don't hang up, don't hang up, don't hang up, don't hang up.
22, to break up with someone. Do you know what this means? This means to end a romantic relationship. He broke up with his girlfriend last month.
Are you breaking up with me?
Now, you could also say we broke up. So in this case, because the subject is doing the action, you don't have to say with someone. We broke up. I broke up with him. He broke up with me. We broke up.
We broke up.
Don't confuse this with to break something up. This means to separate something into smaller parts. The teacher broke up the assignment into 3 parts.
From this point, we're going to take the life of the project and break it up into 4 phases so that we can discuss the processes that are appropriate to each.
So if you say, "I broke her up," that sounds weird. That sounds like you divided her into smaller parts. But if you say, "I broke up with her," that sounds sad. You ended your romantic relationship with her. Being fluent means you can express your ideas on a variety of topics. Reading the news is the best way to do that. Let's do that now so you can learn 58 advanced words and phrases on a topic people love discussing: their health in the workplace. Let's review the headline: Why personal health and wellness are key to business longevity. Do you know what key means in this context? Key means important, critical, or crucial. Now this functions as an adjective. Notice you have the verb to be, which is plural because there are 2 things: health, wellness. But key doesn't have an S because it functions as an adjective. It would be the same if you replaced it with are, important, critical, or crucial. So still you conjugate your verb to be, singular or plural, but your adjective does not take an S. Now let's talk about longevity. Notice that pronunciation, longe, j. It has a j sound. Longevity, longevity, longevity. This means lasting for a long time. So it means for the business to last for a long time, so to exist. Now, if the word business were not there, this could also be correct, and it would mean your ability to last, to live for a long time. Because of course, health and wellness are key to longevity for us to live for a long time. So you can attach this to something specific like a business or a company or even a product, but without something specific, one would assume that it's a person's longevity. Here, notice it says key takeaways. we know what key means, right? It's important, critical, or crucial. Key. But what about this word? Takeaways. Do you know what that means? Takeaways means points, lessons, or just information. This is very commonly used in a business context. You might start a presentation or a call or a meeting by saying, here are the key takeaways from the conference. And then you would list the most important points or what you learned. Instead of key, it's very common to use main, specifically with takeaways. Here are the main takeaways from the conference. Now, if there were only one piece of information or one lesson, then you would use takeaway in the singular. So it's singular or plural. You could say, my main takeaway from the conference is, and then you would say what you learned or what you remember. So maybe your main takeaway, what you remember or what you learned that was the most important, is the importance of health for business longevity. So this article was very long. We'll review the key takeaways, the most important points. And notice here you have the actual points because they're just listing them as points. So in a meeting, you could verbalize this as first or the first thing or point one, takeaway one. Business leaders who prioritize their personal health and wellness are better equipped to handle their responsibilities and inspire their management teams and employees. Let's review prioritize. This is a verb, to prioritize, prioritize. Now, you may be comfortable with seeing priority as a noun. And if you use priority as a noun, you need make as your verb. You make something a priority. So in this case, it would be business leaders who make personal health and wellness a priority are better equipped. So you would slightly change the sentence structure because you need make something a priority. But in this case, you prioritize something. So the sentence structure is a little different. Let's practice this as a verb. As a verb, you conjugate it according to your time reference. So you could say right now. Right now, I'm prioritizing. It's in progress, so it's the present continuous. I'm prioritizing learning what? Because remember, you prioritize something. I'm prioritizing learning phrasal verbs. I'm prioritizing improving my pronunciation or my grammar. So what about you? Try this. Put this example sentence in the comments to practice this expression. And let us know what you're prioritizing so I can make a lesson on it in the future. Let's review equipped. Notice here the sentence structure is to be equipped. You can add a modifier like better, but the structure is to be, and then equipped functions as your adjective. Notice that pronunciation, that ed is a soft T, equipped. Now, when you say it in a sentence, especially here, because my next sound is a to, I won't even really pronounce this because my next sound is a T. So I would say personal health and wellness are better equipped to handle. So I don't even pronounce it. So just be cautious of that to make sure you understand it and understand that ED. Now, synonyms, you could say prepared, able, ready, and then you use the infinitive, to handle. Capable is a very common synonym, but notice with capable, the sentence structure is different because you need of and then your gerund. So you would use are better capable of handling their responsibilities. And instead of handle, you could use manage, deal with, or address as synonyms. Now, remember, if you're using capable, you need to use the gerund form. Are better equipped to handle their responsibilities and inspire their management teams and employees. Let's review our next key point, our next takeaway. Overexertion, whether it's physical or mental, can lead to burnout. Okay, first let's talk about overexertion. First, let's look at the pronunciation, because notice you have X, but that's not how it's pronounced. It's pronounced as exertion, 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 exertion. And then you just add over in front of it, overexertion, overexertion. So exertion is the use of mental or physical effort. When we add over in front of a word, a verb, it means too much. So in this case, it's too much mental or physical effort. Now, this over in front of a verb is very commonly used. You could just say, I slept until 8 a.m. That's just a statement. I don't know if this is good or bad. If you say, I overslept, then it means it was bad. You slept too much. So that's what it means. It means you had too much of the verb. In this case, the verb is sleep. So you can eat or you can overeat, which is negative. Overwork, overdo something. This is general when you don't want to necessarily specify the verb and you want to be general. You can just use overdo and then you overdo something. So you might say to me, Jennifer, I am so excited to learn English. I am going to study for 12 hours a day. And I might reply back and simply say, don't overdo it. So don't overstudy. Don't overdo it. Or if your friend tells you they're going to go to the gym 5 days a week for 4 hours every day, you might say, whoa, don't overdo it. Don't overwork. Don't overdo it. So let's review this again. Overexertion, too much physical or mental effort in a negative way. Overexertion, whether it's physical or mental. So here, notice the definition is mental or physical. So they're including both of them in this term. Physical exertion or mental exertion can lead to burnout. Burnout is a state of extreme exhaustion where you can no longer function. Can lead to burnout that will negatively impact your leadership, effectiveness, and the organization's overall performance. Notice here they added negatively because impact is neutral. You can have a positive impact and a negative impact. If it sounds like it's obvious, generally native speakers won't specify the negative or positive, but if they want to be very clear, they'll specify it here. Using the opposite, positively, you might say adequate sleep. In this case, it's the subject of the sentence, adequate sleep. Adequate means enough. Adequate sleep can positively impact your studies. Let's move on to our next point, our next takeaway. Leaders who model good health and wellness practices contribute to a healthier work environment. So if the leader models something, it means they display it because they do the activities themselves. So if the leader is drinking a lot of water, other people might see that and say, oh, I should drink more water because, of course, hydration is part of your overall health and wellness. So that could be an example of how you would model health and wellness practices. Some synonyms for model are demonstrate, exhibit, exhibit. Notice that z, exhibit, exemplify, z, exemplify, and show. And remember here, this is your verb, contribute. It's being conjugated with the subject, which is leaders. So when you have additional information like this, sometimes it can confuse students, even native speakers. Here, this is also plural, but if this were singular, it does not matter because the subject is leaders. That is what your verb is being conjugated with. Leaders contribute. Leaders who model good health and wellness practices contribute to a healthier work environment. Boosting, this is another word for increasing, boosting, increasing staff retention and company resilience. Do you know what staff retention means? Retention is the noun form. The verb form is retain. You may be familiar with this because you want to retain vocabulary. So you learn it, but then you have to retain it, any information, which means keep it so you can use it in the future. So staff retention, staff meaning employees. Notice staff is a collective noun. So staff retention is your ability to keep, retain staff, employees, people, so they don't quit. They don't go to other companies because they don't like working for your company. So coming back to our previous vocabulary so you can retain it, the key takeaway was the importance of staff retention. Maybe the key takeaway of the conference was on how to improve your business performance, and one of the most important points was staff retention, keeping people, employees, staff in your business. Now, you always have to ask yourself, how is the word being used and what are the grammatical rules? Because here, if you were to replace staff with employee, you would not add an S because they function as adjectives. They describe what type of retention. Staff retention, employee retention. But if you were to use them as nouns, so I'll put this in parentheses, nouns, retain is your verb, keep is your verb, you conjugate that, but then staff is always a collective noun, but employees is a regular noun. So it takes a singular plural form. So you would talk about keeping or retaining employees because there's more than one, but staff is a collective, so no S. Our next takeaway, new data released by Babbel in 2024. So now here they're going to explain what Babbel is because it's not common knowledge. I didn't know what Babbel was before this article. So Babbel, it's a survey of 500 business leaders in the UK. Now, because this information is between these dashes, you can delete what I have highlighted and the sentence must be grammatically correct. So often if you want to include this additional information either between dashes or between commas, write it first without and then add it in just to make sure your sentence is grammatically correct without it. So new data released by Babbel in 2024 showed that 76% of business leaders wanted to strengthen their own physical, mental, and ethical fitness in order to succeed. Instead of using strengthen, you could use improve, to boost, because strengthen is the verb form, to strengthen. Their own physical, mental, and ethical fitness. Ethical fitness would be their ability to act ethically or make ethical decisions, either one of those. And why are they doing this? In order to succeed. Now, native speakers commonly delete the two words in order, so you just see to succeed, and you might think that this is simply the infinitive. However, depending on the sentence structure, you have to understand that it isn't the infinitive, it's in order to. And I say that because it's very common to begin a sentence with to succeed, to do something. But this isn't the infinitive because that's not grammatical in English. We don't start sentences with the infinitive. So this means in order to succeed, but it's very common to just use the to succeed and leave out in order. This is done in both spoken and written English in a casual and professional context. To succeed, leaders need to boost their ethical fitness. So remember, this means the ability to act ethically. Again, you need to think about how this word is being used. In this case, it's an adverb because it modifies the verb act. To act ethically. In this case, ethical is an adjective and it describes what type of fitness. Ethical fitness. Let's move on to our next key point, an overexhausted. Okay, so now you understand what overexhausted, because we're adding over. In this case, exhausted is an adjective. Exhausted. I'm exhausted. And we know this is going to be an, so we need a noun. An overexhausted leader. So it would be a leader, but because this is a vowel sound, you have to change your article to an instead of a. A leader, an overexhausted leader. So of course, exhausted already means extremely tired. So adding over really strengthens that. It emphasizes that. Sleep deprived. Deprived means not enough sleep, but this is prolonged. For example, you would say, I didn't sleep well last night, or I had a terrible sleep last night. You can replace this with, I had an amazing sleep last night, or I slept amazingly last night. So you can turn these positive. Now, if this takes place for weeks, I didn't sleep well last night, and you say this every night for weeks, then you could describe yourself as sleep deprived. I'm sleep deprived. I'm so sleep deprived. I need to solve this problem. An overexhausted, sleep-deprived leader is also more likely to be a less effective negotiator. So in this case, a negotiator, this is a person who negotiates. The verb is to negotiate. Less capable of, remember we talked about capable as a replacement to equipped. And when you use equipped or ready, able, you need the infinitive. Capable of. Now, capable of something. Empathy is a something. It's a noun. You could also use the gerund verb. Capable of expressing empathy. That could be a verb that goes with the noun empathy. Less capable of empathy and understanding different points, viewpoints, and is not able to drive innovation and change within the company. Notice here, so also able, that was a replacement to capable or equipped, is not equipped, is not able to drive. To drive innovation means to cause it to happen. To drive change means to cause it to happen. So to drive something is very much a business verb. Synonyms are inspire, encourage, or facilitate, which is very much a professional or academic verb, to facilitate innovation, to cause it to happen. Our next point, a company culture that focuses on overall health and wellness will eventually increase staff retention. So increase their ability to keep staff. Because remember, staff retention is the concept, the noun form of the verb to keep, to retain staff. So to increase staff retention, which ultimately contributes to the longevity of the business. Let's talk about a company culture. So this represents the values, beliefs, and practices that shape how employees interact and work within an organization. It's the same concept of a culture within a community or a family, but in this case, it's within the company. And often it's management that really shapes the company culture. So you could say Apple as a company has, we use the verb have for possession, and then a company culture, and then you would use an adjective. On the negative side, people use the adjective toxic. Oh, toxic company culture to refer to one that is very bad, toxic. So it's about the worst you could have. And then for positive adjective, you could simply use amazing or any other positive adjective that you know. So I'm not sure if this is what the culture is at Apple because I don't work there, but we have either the negative or the positive. Hopefully you would describe the positive for your company culture, how people interact, how they work, how they behave, their values, their beliefs. All of that would be the company culture. Now let's move on to our final takeaway, our last main point. Health truly is wealth. Have you heard this before? This isn't new to this article, the concept of saying health is wealth. Health is wealth. This is a very common phrase in English, health is wealth. It means that you should prioritize. You should make health a priority because it is the most important thing. It is wealth. Health truly is wealth, especially if you want to be a good business leader. Let's end this article with a positive statement using some of the vocabulary we learned to retain that vocabulary. Health is key. We learned what that means. Health is wealth. We know this is a common saying or proverb. I will prioritize. We learned the verb to prioritize. Here it's in the future simple. I will prioritize because we use the future simple for commitments. I will prioritize my health. I am committed. Or I will make my health a priority because we learn to make something a priority. So choose your favorite one from these and write it in the comments so you retain this vocabulary as well. And now I'll read the article from start to finish so you can focus on my pronunciation because there were some advanced words in this article. Let's do that now. Why personal health and wellness are key to business longevity. Key takeaways. Business leaders who prioritize their personal health and wellness are better equipped to handle the responsibilities and inspire their management teams and employees. Overexertion, whether it's physical or mental, can lead to burnout that will negatively impact your leadership effectiveness and the organization's overall performance. Leaders who model good health and wellness practices contribute to a healthier work environment, boosting staff retention and company resilience. New data released by Babbel in 2024, a survey of 500 business leaders in the UK, showed that 76% of business leaders wanted to strengthen their own physical, mental, and ethical fitness in order to succeed. An overexhausted, sleep-deprived leader is also more likely to be a less effective negotiator, less capable of empathy and understanding different viewpoints, and is not able to drive innovation and change within the company. A company culture that focuses on overall health and wellness will eventually increase staff retention, which ultimately contributes to the longevity of the business. Health truly is wealth, especially if you want to be a good business leader. Do you want me to make another lesson just like this? If you do, put let's go in the comments. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And this lesson will definitely help you get fluent in 2025. Watch it now.